Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Welcome to your last lecture on the very last day of classes. Before we get started, I do just want to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we're currently on. As an uninvited settler and an immigrant to this country, I take this responsibility quite seriously. So I do want to take a moment to respectfully acknowledge the traditional territory of the McIsaac and Otonabee. Every day we hope to offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their teaching for our earth and our relations. And hopefully all of you that have been here at Trent do take this responsibility and really learn every single day what we can about the land that we're currently on. So welcome, everyone. If I have not had the pleasure of meeting you yet, my name is Steph Muehletaler, and I'm the principal here in Otonabee College. I am so absolutely thrilled that we are back here after 5 years of not doing this in person here in Wenjack. If you can believe that, it's been a little bit, so we are very, very excited to have you all here. I want to welcome everyone. We will be posting this online later, so welcome to those that will be watching. Welcome to our speakers, our graduating students, students that are still doing their journey here at Trent, our faculty, our staff, and our alumni, the community, our supporters, and again, once again, the students. We are gathering here today to embark and celebrate each of our journeys as a community of learners as you embark on your next chapter in life. And I would like to say, hopefully, it's probably 4:35 or so on this Friday, that it is your last day of classes and your last lecture at Trent University for a lot of you. This is a huge milestone, and we're so excited to bring you all together and to have faculty, staff, and members of the community to celebrate this, because it is quite celebratory. Over the last 4 or so years, give and take, how long your journey has been here, we've had the privilege of developing relationships with each of you and witnessing your journey to completion of your undergraduate degree. I recognize that some of you in this room are not graduating yet, and so thank you for being here, and we do hope that you find these 4 talks quite inspiring and that you'll be able to apply some of your new knowledge to the time left here that you have at Trent. So, what is the last lecture all about? This is an annual event that started here at Trent University almost 10 years ago by an OC student named Jamie Lester. And they decided and were inspired by the last lecture that happens at many universities across North America, particularly at Carnegie Mellon University in the States. There, a faculty member named Randy Pausch was asked to speak on his last lecture, and he spoke about childhood dreams. And he, before TikTok and Instagram and all the things, he went on YouTube, he went viral, he was on Oprah, it became a book. But what was really fascinating, and if you do get a chance, I inspire you to look at that last lecture, is that he was actually actively dying of pancreatic cancer. So in reality, it really was his last lecture. We wanted to bring it here to Trent to celebrate everyone and all the things that have been accomplished in this graduating class, to acknowledge the hard work that has gone to achieving this goal, and to give thanks to all those that have supported you along the way. So, how did we get to here? What happened is we asked you, the graduating class, whether you're graduating in the spring, in the winter, in the fall, or after the summer semester, to tell us who has inspired you, who has been there to support you as a learner. And we got over 200 nominations for faculty, staff, and students, and we also have a very well-respected alumni. So these are the speakers that you have selected for your last lecture. Over the next hour, we will have 4 different speakers that will talk to you about their own stories here at Trent and to share some wisdom with all of you. We have asked them to reflect on how Trent, this very special community, has challenged the way that they think. And I'm sure that you will all be inspired in one way or another. So let's get the show on the road. There we go. Our first speaker is Don McIsaac, our alumni speaker. He was born and raised in Orillia, attending Otonabee College and graduating with a BA in history in 1978. While his hockey career was legendary, highlighted by a stint on the Cat's Ass All-Stars, it came to a sudden halt due to a lack of skill. Fortunately, Don did write this. Fortunately, Don had a plan B and became a CPA and spent nearly 30 years in the United States turning around troubled companies that were in financial difficulty. He retired in 2021 after 8 years as a CFO at Circus Aircraft. He returned to Orillia, Ontario in 2022, and within a few months learned that the current mayor of Orillia was not running for re-election. Both of Don's parents had both been mayors of Orillia, and he was eager to continue the family business. Don signed up, and he won that election in the fall of 2022. He now lives in Orillia with his wife Cindy, his dogs Oscar and Gracie, and has no regrets and has yet to give up his bid on immortality. So, if we can all give a big warm round of applause to Don McIsaac.
Thank you and good afternoon. It was a delight to receive an invite from Stephanie to make some comments to challenge the way you think. Congratulations to each of you as you begin another chapter in your life. Hopefully you cherish the incredible moments you have had as part of this community. Otonabee College learning continued beyond my graduation in 1978, as many of us fellow students have kept in touch. A number of recurring lessons in my life were learned here and reinforced elsewhere. While these are all important lessons, they are in no particular order. Be prepared. John Barker was my history professor, and we had a class which had two people in it. It met Friday morning at 9 o'clock in his office. Thursday night was cat's ass pub night, and the other guy drank more than me. He made me look good, but he did drink more than I did. We had to read a book a week, so you can see the problem here. Pub night, book a week in the morning, one person shows up. How to prepare. This was before the internet. I found my good friend, the Encyclopedia Britannica, at the Battle Library. It was about 30 volumes. It's probably 14 inches by 24 inches fine print, and you open up Francis Bacon. 3 pages of fine print on Francis Bacon, so you could preview that. It would save you from reading the book. And I remember Francis Bacon. He was a proud man, and he was traveling along and engaged in debate with a colleague, and they were talking about refrigeration, and he said that if you refrigerated chicken carcass, it would last longer. So they had to stop, get a chicken. I don't know if it was live or dead, but they opened it up. He cut himself, and he got sick. So he was a proud man, as I said earlier, and instead of staying locally, he wanted to stay in a more posh place, traveled 15 or 20 miles to get there, and unfortunately, the journey killed him because when he got there a few days later, he was so sick he could not recover. So his pride killed him. I think that's an interesting lesson. My next point is don't be too proud to listen. If you missed the Francis Bacon story, this point's for you. By listening, we can create new perspective and enhance our thinking. Have the confidence to be humble. Golda Meir once told someone that they were not good enough to be humble, so keep that in mind as you progress in life. If you don't know, you don't know. That's an important lesson I learned the hard way several times. Don't make up an answer, but do go and find out. It adds to your character if you can say you don't know. It can also get you fired if you're supposed to know. I found that out too. So be careful with this one. Don't take no for an answer. Many of the jobs in my career came after the first choice either bailed or failed. Always make a point of thanking the interviewer and ask them to reach out if anything else comes up. Having someone tell you no may be the start of a discussion, not the end. Persistence is good, but know the difference between quitting, which is an act of desperation, and stopping, which is an act of preservation. Good things can happen after no. We all know this next lesson, I think, to some extent. It's be kind, always. In school, people would say to be kind as you never knew what people were going through in their lives. This is true. The best things in life are free. Kindness, trust, love, dignity, integrity, and respect. Your ability to be kind, trustworthy, is one of the few things that is 100% within your control. These concepts are priceless but free and matter above all other things. They can't be bought or sold. Learn how to identify a problem, then build a team to fix it. My career was spent fixing companies in dire condition. Turnaround work is not for the weak of heart. Usually you had 30, 60 days to turn around the computer, they would close it, and you'd have however many people work there out of work and not able to pay their mortgages. One guy called me a few days before my job was to start and told me not to pack a lunch as the bank was coming in on Monday to close the shop up. So I got there at 7 o'clock, and the bank came in at 10, and we convinced them to give us a couple weeks because they had $10 million in receivables, and if they closed the shop, they wouldn't collect that money, but if they gave us some time, we could collect the money. And we collected it. We gave 10% off. The bank didn't know that until 2 months later, but what you don't know won't hurt you. That was a long day, but it did work, so building a team is important. Use what you have. When my mother would go to make dinner, she used what she had. I mean, we didn't grow up in the best of circumstances. We had what we needed, though. The problems a leader gets are hard as the easy ones are solved and not escalated because others could already solve them. Either the others did not have the authority, the experience, or brains. All are problems. Use what you have. It may not be perfect, but it allows you to keep moving forward. Pick your battles. Don't fight everything. If you do, your life will be miserable, I guarantee you. Life is a series of compromises when lived best, and that means holding your nose at times to get alignment. When this was first written, my nitpicky communications assistant favorite, eldest daughter, this is her writing, not mine, changed agreement to alignment. At some point, she let me know she wasn't being nitpicky. The word is part of a compromise. Getting to agreement is a simple concept. It means everyone agrees. Getting people who disagree to align is an art, and it only comes with compromise. Alignment means you're all moving in the same direction. There will always be disagreements on a team, and not every battle has to be fought to the death. Drop your sword. And I mean it, drop your sword. Don't fight all the time. If you can get people to compromise on a few things, you are still in alignment. When you pick a hill to die on, be prepared to fight like you're the third monkey on the ramp at Noah's Ark and it's starting to rain, because give it all you got. Have confidence and be humble. Hang out with people who get you. Make sure you're comfortable enough to challenge and be challenged. You need to be confident enough not just to challenge, but know how to listen when you are challenged, and surround yourself with people who aren't afraid to challenge you. If your friends can't tell you you're going down the wrong path, then why bother with them? If you criticize an idea and the response gets emotional, it tells you the person does not have a lot of confidence in themselves or their idea. Either that, if they're yelling at you, you're on Fox News. Read. Try to read a book a day. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You can learn a lot, like not everyone can write. It's one thing you learn. Autobiographies are great. I always like to see how people think of themselves, especially people who have gone through crisis, to see how they either marginalize it or own it. It's always a telling time. Do the right thing always. It's easy to say, but it's really hard to do. You will be tempted. My worst regrets come from knowing there was a chance to do the right thing but did not. Own your mistakes and learn from them. Acknowledge failure. Don't spend energy hiding or justifying something you've done wrong. That effort could be better spent elsewhere, and it tells people a lot about you. They know you made a mistake. Do you own it? Blame it on others? Hide it? Your response is telling. Don't care who gets the credit. A lot more will get done, and those who need credit can grab it. It's, if you don't need it, don't take it. I mean, just let things happen. More things happen that way. Another thing I've learned is to weaponize humor. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I've learned that the hard way, too. It puts a lot of people into use, and you learn a lot more. Be careful how you use it, though, because sometimes something that's funny to you is not funny to somebody else, and you need to be sensitive to that. Say no. It's a complete sentence, and you can usually come back and say yes later. And I've learned that, too. If you tell someone no, you're selling a car, you say no, they come with a higher price, say yes. Learn something new every day. I did not know how to juggle. I can do 3 balls and sometimes 5, but I can't do 4 because of the physics thing. People say the guy's got balls, so you can do with that. I'm going to save my unicycling story for later because that was another learning experience that took more than a day. Brevity is an art. The best speakers say more with less, and this gives listeners more time to reflect. We're now roughly 7 minutes into this speech, so not everyone's an artist, I guess. Watch what people do under pressure. It's kind of corny, but my mother would say that a diamond is a lump of coal that made good under pressure. People's true character comes out when they are under pressure and have tough decisions to make. What do they do when no one's looking? That's an important thing. Like, the chips are down, what do you do? No pressure, no diamonds. I encourage you all to make a difference. Leave things better than you found them. Give thanks. Thank those who helped you, and help those who didn't. When I ran for re-election, there were people who helped me and there were people who didn't. The people who didn't, a lot of them ran after and said, hey, I want to be on this committee or that committee. Fine, I look at them in terms of the qualifications. I don't harbor a grudge and help them out. It's the thing to do. Thank those who reached out in a dark moment, your profs and others who loaned you their values until you found your own. That's important too. Try not to use the word I. An exception would be when you're taking responsibility for something or directly asked for your opinion. This is the first time I used I in a speech. Now I've used it 3 times, so that's my record. Oh, here we go again. What I did not learn at Trent. We learned a lot of things here, but right now we're in Wenjack Theatre. My heroes, when I read history at Trent, were John A. Macdonald, Egerton Ryerson. These people were giants of Canadian history, 10 feet tall, impressive people. That was learned here, but that's wrong. What I did not know until later was the Cheney Wenjack story. We're in the Wenjack Theatre. Cheney Wenjack's my hero. Don't make my mistake. Thank you. Megwich, merci.
Thank you so much, Don, for all those many, many lessons. Now I'd like to introduce our staff speaker, Rachel Glofcheskie-Shewfelt. Born and raised in Arnprior, Ontario, but once her sights was set on Trent University, Peterborough, she never looked back. She is a proud, and we'll forgive her for this, Champlain alum of the class of 2014 with a bachelor's degree in biology. She took a leap to keep doing what she enjoyed most during her academic days, and that was working in student affairs and programming. She has worked at Seneca College for campus living centers as a residence life coordinator and returned to Trent as Otonabee College's assistant 3 years ago. Today, life looks like supporting students, weekly Pilates, weekly Pilates and long walks with her husband, Zach, and her dog, Marlo. Let's please, I'll give a warm welcome to the one and only Rachel Glofcheskie-Shewfelt.
First, I'd like to thank those that nominated me. To be here today on the stage is a baffling honor and a goal that I did not realize I had until I heard I was selected. Thank you to the student, staff, faculty, alumni, guests, and community members in the room. There's a million ways you could spend a Friday evening that is also the last day of class. I am sure many of you did not picture attending an additional lecture was the way you would do it. I want to thank the committee for organizing this event, Megan Weirmeyer, Peter Luzon, and Dr. Stephanie Mueller-Toller. So I am here today as a staff speaker. I have worked in an office down the hall, part of the Otonabee College office, since February 8th, 2021, but my Trent journey started much earlier. I am an alumni of the biology department and Champlain College. Now my passion is student affairs on the East Bank. A little bit different than dissecting brains, memorizing every bone in the human body, and spending weekends playing broomball and floor hockey. In prep of today, I watched each recorded last lecture from previous years and those delivered at other colleges, listening to stories, relating to trials and triumphs, and left wondering what my story is and how I would tell it. I thought about what I would want to hear as a graduating student sitting here in April, and I remembered being riddled with senioritis the minute the January term started. My transcript was looking more like a cold medicine aisle, vitamin C's. And my cover letter and resume was emailed to every job I could find on Indeed. I had no better made plans than heading to my parents' basement in 3 short weeks. As a young adult, I have realized all the cliches of, it will all work out, and it's about the journey, not the destination, and you just need one person to believe in yourself, even if that's you, are so full of bullshit and so true. So if the next 9 minutes sound like the same, I apologize, but I hope you'll stick with me. In some aspects, I have your stereotypical university success story. I came from a loving family as the youngest of 4 kids in a small town that was 3.5 hours away from Trent. Close enough for reading week laundry, but far away enough to move out of the house. I enjoyed orientation week, or better known as introductory seminar week at the time, and friends that I made between events, cabinet, clubs, and groups 10 years are still the people I call friends today. My husband is the cute boy that sat 4 rows behind and 7 seats to the left of me in SC 137 during the Biology 2070 exam 8 years ago this month. Hi, honey. I became a quintessential 20-year-old the day I got a tattoo without my parents knowing. Hi, Mom and Dad. And I went to the bar that evening with bandage and tape covering the fresh ink. Now, at 27, I own a red brick bungalow in the south end of Peterborough, have a pension, TFSA, and RRSP that receive monthly contributions, recently paid for and had the engagement and wedding of my dreams, own my own vehicle, am free of student debt, and recently rescued an American bulldog who takes up more space in my heart and my bed than I ever pictured. If you're looking for advice on how to get here, I apologize that this is not what the next few minutes will be about. I still have no idea how I got here or did those things. To share what expertise or advice I apparently have to be on this stage today, I need to talk a little bit more about being a student. And these thoughts and ideas are easily said with the space and time I've had since graduating. You might assume that working in post-secondary means I loved being in it, I was the top of my class, and I soared high. But I don't think that's any way I would describe my time. Some lowlights, perhaps. I applied to be a Champlain College ambassador, didn't get it, and now I supervise the Otonabee College ambassadors. That biology major I busted my butt on, I've been required to have a bachelor's degree for every job I've held, but I've never been asked my grades, thank God. And the most knowledge that I can scrape from that time is that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. All kidding aside, I did leave with amazing skills that help me today, like communication, research, and understanding the value of equity, diversity, and inclusion. But I honestly don't think that going to university was my dream 10 years ago when I was in high school and deciding what was next. I don't think it was my dream when my aspirations as a student athlete with eyes on OUA winning rugby teams changed when a repeated ACL and MCL injury took me out of my final year of hockey and rugby, the 2 things that filled my calendar. And I spent my summer after high school graduation recovering from reconstructive surgery. I don't think it was my dream the moment my campus tour didn't leave me screaming, heck yes, and it was more a quiet, yeah, I'll go here, when I got in the car afterwards. And I quietly clicked accept Bachelor of Science on OUAC on my family's desktop computer. I don't think it was my dream the moment in second year when I sat in the Zosky College foyer, killing time before class, before TikTok existed, texting on my BlackBerry, saying, I just got this mark on a quiz. I really don't think I should be here. And my friend's follow-up was encouraging me to go to therapy for the first time. Maybe it became my dream to be in university the day I realized it was all I had. I pointed out a lot of losses that I felt then were huge, but the biggest loss of my life was my sister Grace. Grace Glofcheskie was a graduate of the University of Guelph for her Bachelor of Science in Kinesiology and her Master's of Human Health and Nutritional Sciences. She was a nationally ranked golfer and high school rugby player, and she was the person that texted me to keep me in school that day I mentioned, and so many others. She passed away December 13th, 2015, at the hands of a hit and run by a stolen vehicle. During the late hours of the same day, I wrote my anatomy exam in second year in the athletic center gym. It might sound like there were similarities between what she did and what I did, and there's no doubt there. She was 5 years older than me, and when I did not know what to do, I did what Grace did. You can probably understand that this was pivotal in many ways, for many reasons. The one I want to highlight is that while at home processing the funeral over winter break, I received an envelope from my peers in Champlain, and inside was a greeting card that had 2 additional pieces of paper taped to it to ensure everyone from our orientation team's message to me could fit on it. In those moments, I ate to get back to Trent, to get back to people that knew me best, the people that knew Rachel as Rachel, or Moso Gloff, my nickname to most, not someone's younger sister, not the girl in a knee brace, and not the girl whose sister passed away, which is how the stairs in the grocery store in that charming small town I started in felt. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere and as someone after a loss. In the months after this tragedy, I started living for me. I didn't have the persons whose proverbial footsteps I was following ahead of me anymore. And while that was terrifying, there was something freeing about making my own choices and doing things that appealed and pleased me best for the first time. I cut my hair short, removed alcohol from my life, and got further involved on campus. And as you might figure out, met that cute boy in my biology class. Writing these words today made me realize the impact of one's identity. And I don't mean how we look in passport photos. How we label ourselves with whatever relation to someone, what sport we play, the job we have, even traits, hobbies, and values. It's all temporary. How we start the day might not be how we end it. How we forecast a new year when the calendar turns is usually so different than how we reflect on 365 memories 12 months later. And a journey is done right if we look at the world a whole lot different at the end than how we started it. Unless you're Taylor Swift. If Taylor Swift is watching this, don't change and say hi to Travis. So I shared humorously that I don't know how or why I am the bullet list of accomplishments I shared, and I mean it. Because it's how I am in a snapshot today. It's not who I am forever, and I am okay with that change. Reflecting on today's theme of challenge the way you think, sometimes it's not the institution, courses, bosses, or teachers that challenge us to think. It's the moments and us ourselves that challenge us best. And sometimes the outcome, reward, change, or impact isn't immediate. It's years later when we stand a little taller, react a little better, or show up a little kinder, or get invited to give a lecture to the graduating class, that we experience the different person we have grown into thanks to these experiences, and we realize just how different we are than we thought we'd be. I've said a lot of things today, and I hope you have found some relation to my story and my journey. But in case it was all for naught, or you'd like to start paying attention now, here's the actual applicable advice I wish I was told 5 years ago. Wear pants that fit. No one's gonna know the numerical size, but they will know if you're uncomfortable when you sit down. Only have Amazon Prime signed in on one device on your phone, ideally not one device in your life, ideally not your phone. Your spending will change forever. When you choose to buy into it, read your pension and insurance plans. Don't assume what they cover and how they work. Apologize when you think you should. Don't wait. Say something positive to yourself once a day, and maybe if you can't, say something positive to someone else. Be kind to yourself and to others. Thank you for listening to my journeys thus far. I hope you take away an eagerness to challenge yourself and let the moments challenge you, and that you wake up each day a new, stronger person than the one you were 24 hours before. I am still learning and evolving in my sense of self, and I hope you are psyched to get your adventure started. Thank you, and cheers.
It's such a joy to see. Rachel was a student I worked with many years ago, and so proud of you. That was beautiful. Thank you. So now I'm going to introduce our faculty speaker for today, who I think I stressed out beyond belief with this task, who was like, not 3 hours? I said, no, Karen, not 3 hours. You have 10 minutes. Give or take. So I'm so humbled and proud to introduce your last lecture faculty speaker, Dr. Karen L. Blair, who is an associate professor of psychology and the director of Trent Social Relations, Attitude, and Diversity Lab. She is the co-founding editor of the co-founding editor of the Journal of Femininities and has spent 10 years as the chair of the Canadian Psychological Association's Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity section. Dr. Blair's research focuses on how individuals and their relationships falter or thrive within their broader social networks. Within this context, she also studies the relational and individual consequences of social prejudices, including homophobia, femphobia, anti-Semitism, and anti-Semitism. In the classroom, Dr. Blair's teaching focuses on close relationships, LGBTQ psychology, the history of psychology, and the social psychology of the Holocaust. Let's please give Dr. Karen Blair a very warm welcome.
I have number 1, so that I can move a little. I also asked if I could have slides. Yeah, and I didn't have them done by midnight, so. Anyway, we're going to try something different. Like many of you, I actually joined Trent in 2020 as well. That is, if you took the regular 4 years. 2020 was my first semester at Trent, and I spent most of it at home in my home office, kind of flailing around in front of my webcam, trying to make lectures seem like normal lectures. And it was really hard to make it feel like the real thing. Another thing that we have in common in terms of also joining at the same time is that this is actually my last lecture. It's not actually my last lecture forever, but for a little while. Yeah. See ya. My first sabbatical is scheduled to start this summer. Yeah. And it's the first since getting my PhD 12 years ago. And so while the concept of a sabbatical actually originates in the Torah, going way, way back, with the commandment to give the land a year of rest once every 7 years, in the late 1800s, it was adapted, this concept, to apply to university professors, in which we would become eligible for periodic leaves every once in a while, paid leaves. But why would universities pay people to take a year off? It's not actually a year off. It's a year for self-improvement, for continued learning. So instead of seeing it as paying someone to take the year off, a professor's sabbatical is viewed as an investment in the future of the university. By giving professors a year to change their routines, explore new ideas, and update their professional learning, the university is ensuring that the intellectual capacity of their faculty will remain fertile and not, in more modern lingo, burn out. I plan on sleeping. Thus, contrary to popular opinion, or at least my dad's opinion, a professor's sabbatical is still a time of intense work. But the nature of that work looks really different. Instead of standing on stages like this one and lecturing to students like you, and instead of spending many hours grading papers, some of which were written by AI, I'll be spending the year immersed in reading, writing, and thinking with an emphasis on the latter. And this brings me to the theme of today. Trent's tagline, challenge the way that you think. As you've sat in these seats or other seats around campus, your professors have attempted to challenge you. They have hopefully, as the refrain goes, not told you what to think as much as they have helped you to learn how to think. The true test of what you've actually learned in these past 4 years, or 5 or 6, will be how well you're able to continue challenging your thoughts in the years to come. 13 years ago, and I just learned this last night, Trent put out a social media ad. When many of you might have even been in grade 5, grade 6, social media was new. Instagram was 3 years old. And there was this idea catching hold that there would be an app for everything. And the ad read, "There is no thinking app. Can you become a better thinker?" We believe the answer is yes. At Trent University, we know the best knowledge is shared. By debating, exploring our differences, and listening to diverse perspectives, we create new thinking. And we think the world could use more of that. Challenge the way that you think. So much has changed in our society since that ad came out. Indeed, some of you have spent some of the most tumultuous and socially divisive years right here on this campus. Challenging the way you think has become something that is much more daunting than we perhaps could have ever predicted a decade ago. Thinking has never been an easy thing. It's meant to be a hard and rigorous process. The rapid-paced, always online world that we now live in makes it incredibly difficult to carve out the time and the space needed to think about important issues that are unfolding in society. Issues which it seems we are becoming more polarized about. In many ways, as the decade-old ad from Trent implies, polarization can actually be a good thing. To the extent that it means that we're reaching new boundaries and willing to tackle issues that were previously too taboo to be discussed or debated in public, Polarization can push the poles of social change and generate new social change. But, quoting from a recent public policy review, the polarization in Canada that we're facing hasn't taken on this constructive hue. Our state of polarization is not defined by vigorous engagement, but by disengagement, by unproductive bitterness, and by impure motives, end quote. Indeed, the basic issues that we're often think we're polarized on, we're not as polarized as we may think. But what we do face today is binary thinking. Right, wrong, black, white, the right side of history, the wrong side of history, us versus them. Binary views lend themselves to really catchy chants. They're great sound bites for the news or for the average 30-second TikTok video. But they are the death of a nuanced reality. They do not help us to challenge the way that we think. To quote that same report again, on many issues and in complex ways, we have grown more dogmatic and intense in our beliefs and less trusting of the people who disagree with us, end quote. All too often, we are asked to make up our minds instantly on complex issues that have far more than two sides, let alone a right side and a wrong side. We are put under pressure to act and think quickly. What do we want? When do we want it? When we add the fact that we are now less trusting of those that disagree with us, the prospect of continuing to have debate freely and openly feels like something that is getting more and more out of reach every year, every month that goes by. But these discussions are so necessary. They're necessary for the creation of new knowledge, for finding crucial common ground that can support the foundations of innovative problem solving. I need like a flatter, okay. In 1940, 164,000 Jewish men, women, and children had been packed into the 1.5 square miles of the Łódź ghetto in Poland by the Nazis. That's double the population of Peterborough in roughly an area smaller than the area of Trent lands. With little to live on, surviving each day itself was a miracle. The penalty for leaving the ghetto was death. Rumors of mass shootings in the nearby forests and mobile gas vans were beginning to circulate. One man, Chaim Mordecai Radkowski, was given the impossible task of serving as a liaison between the Jewish community and the Nazis. In 1942, the Nazis came to him and they demanded that if the ghetto was to remain productive, Radkowski had to provide a list of 20,000 unproductive people to be deported to their deaths: the sick, the elderly, and the children. If the demand was not met, then the entire population of the ghetto would be liquidated. And so Mordecai gave a famous speech in which he told the adults of the ghetto that their only chance of survival was to turn over the old, the ill, the young, and the children. He pleaded with the mothers and fathers, saying, "Give me your children." And if you Google that, you'll find the speech online, not live, reconstructed. In Holocaust education, we refer to these types of situations as choiceless choices, situations in which people had no real control over their circumstances or their fate. And yet, they were presented with something that seemed like a choice. For Mordecai, the choice was do something, ask for the sacrifice of 20,000 children, or allow 164,000 people to die immediately. For parents, they were being asked to do the impossible, to choose their own lives over the lives of their children. In reality, the concept of a choice was a mirage. The children's deaths did not save their parents. By 1944, nearly everybody in the Łódź ghetto had died in the gas chambers of Auschwitz. Judging right and wrong in these kinds of situations is not simple. Even when our gut pulls us in a clear direction, 80 years later, we still don't have crystal clear, perfect answers about each person's morality or right or wrong of their decisions. Sometimes we have to sit with the uncertainty of not knowing what is right or what is wrong. Rarely do we have enough information to judge for ourselves, and rarely do we have the time, skill, resources, or freedom to come to a reasoned conclusion. And yet, we are called upon to do so daily, to render judgments on issues and to issue opinions, sometimes on events that happened on the other side of the world only moments ago. For many of the situations where we are called upon to render an opinion, the urgency is contrived. That doesn't mean the issue isn't important. Indeed, the more important the issue, the less you should rush yourself into rendering an opinion. Once we speak our opinions out loud, and this is research-based, they become much more deeply entrenched. Those who would take advantage know this all too well, and thus they apply pressure. Speak now. But you need time to challenge the way that you think. In preparation for sabbatical, I have compiled a list of controversial topics for deep exploration. I'm not going to share the list. Topics that I have not had time to properly investigate and learn about. It is ultimately for me a quest to scrutinize my own opinions for consistency, sound logic, and potential biases. Are there opinions that I hold merely because they are safe or popular? Have I signed on to any seemingly virtuous views that are actually scientifically flawed? Am I doing enough to seek information that would disprove what I may desperately want to be true? I'm looking forward to the next year and getting to dive back into being a student, a full-time learner. Being a university student carves out this really special time in our lives where we get to play with ideas and chase endless rabbit holes of knowledge. It's not that we shouldn't keep doing these things when university ends. It's just sadly that we don't always have the time. So what does this mean for you as you come to the end of your degree? In the Middle Ages, at the earliest European universities, those who completed their bachelor's degree were seen as beginners. My history of psych students hate it when I tell them that. They had proven their mastery of the basics, and they're ready to embark on deeper learning and debate, to move into a realm where they could be the expert worthy of offering an opinion on a text. In many ways, this is also true for you. While you're finishing your degree, you're ready now to begin your lifelong journey of learning. As you begin that journey beyond Trent, remember that uncertainty is not a weakness. It is an invitation to engage more deeply with the world of knowledge. When you're asked to sign a petition, to take up a position, or even when you are asked to be on the right side of history, remember the tools and the skills that you learned at Trent. Remember the power of discussion and debate and the feeling that there is always more to know. Leaving here and saying, I now truly know how little I know, is not a sign of failure, but rather it's a sign that you understood the assignment. Embrace uncertainty. Sit with ambiguity. Be willing to have the thoughts that make you uncomfortable. Do your best to avoid giving in to the anxiety of uncertainty by grasping at the easy, ready-made opinions and dogma. No matter how comforting, no matter how rhyming, doing so is to betray the very reason for which universities exist. My hope for all of you is that in the years to come, when you get your Trent Alumni magazine in the mail, you will open it up and you will see the words, challenge the way that you think. And I hope that you will take a moment out of your busy life to ask what you can do to make more time and space in your life for thinking and for learning, and to ask yourself whether you have done enough to protect freedom of thought. The future of our society, including our universities, rests on our collective ability to engage in open debates and challenging discussions. For the time being, we technically, on paper, still have the right to do so. But I fear that if we continue to paint our world in binaries of right and wrong, good and bad, virtuous or canceled, then taking the time to challenge the way we think will become a long-lost privilege. while on trial for failing to adhere to the dogma of the day and for corrupting the youth, Socrates supposedly said that the unexamined life is not worth living. He was found guilty and sentenced to death for having a passion for wisdom, a thirst for knowledge, and an unwillingness to give up on continuously challenging the way that he and his students thought. Today, more than 2,400 years later, you're about to graduate and become the change makers, voters, leaders, parents, and citizens who will hold the power to decide whether or not our society becomes one that would put thinking on trial or see its defense as worthy of a fight to the death, the hill to die on. For the sake of my future as a professor, as a thinker, and as a corrupter of youth, I hope you will choose the latter. So congratulations, class of the pandemic. I wish you a life rich in questions, curiosity, and many, many, many sleepless nights challenging the way that you think. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Blair. We've worked together a lot with the college and Dr. Blair, and I've never had the privilege of hearing you speak, and so I will audit your class one day, but that was such a privilege, and I think for those folks that haven't, you have had that honor now today. And now for our last speaker. I have been in this field for just about 20 years, and my greatest teachers will always be the students. Every single day I learn something new and I am humbled, and they tell me what is cool and what is not and what's going on with my fit and gosh knows whatever else. But I had the privilege of meeting our next and last speaker on a screen, and she is a force to be reckoned with, just an absolute joy. And it is a real privilege as student affairs professionals and academics to get to see the growth of students. Here at Trent, we don't have a valedictorian, and this is the closest that we get. And we had so many beautiful nominations for this individual. So it is my pleasure, and I will read their bio, to introduce our student speaker, the closest thing we have to a valedictorian here at Trent, the one and only Misti Noël Worden. Misti Noël is homeschooled all the way up to her acceptance at Trent University. Misti Noël was determined to get the most out of her time in Peterborough, and over the course of just 4 short years, it is safe to say that she has. After working as an orientation week leader, a college ambassador for OC, an online learning student assistant, and a residence life don, volunteering as a student tutor for the Biology Undergraduate Society and the social rep for the Otonabee College Cabinet, and attending far too many events to count, she has learned a lot about herself, the world, and chemistry. Grateful to be your elected student speaker, she cannot wait to challenge the way you think one last time before leaving Trent and continuing along her path to medicine. It is my great honor to introduce Misti Noël Worden.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I know. Hi, everyone. My name's Misti Noël, and I am absolutely ecstatic to be here as your selected or elected student speaker for the 2023-2024 last lecture. I can see a lot of recognizable faces, but also a lot of new faces and a great turnout, so it's very exciting to have you here. My mission today is to challenge the way that you think one last time. And with 4 long years at Trent, it was really hard to choose just one tidbit of wisdom to share with you guys here today. So I chose 3, and I'm gonna hope that at least one of them is going to resonate with you and that you'll be able to connect with it as we go forward. So, during my first year of my undergrad, I learned that I could switch paths. Initially a forensics student, when I took my Intro to Crime Scene Investigation class, my life changed. I sat there one day and I opened up the video modules for my Intro to Biocrime and Bioterrorism. And when I tell you that I've never been happier to have an online lecture, I mean it. I cried so hard, like so much snot, and I had to pause the lecture multiple times, and I took notes like this so I couldn't look up to see their faces. And to this day, I am positive that Dr. Seville uses those slides as a weeding method, and that he just gets rid of the weak from the forensics right then and there. And originally, I was pretty ashamed to be part of that weak crowd. I had spent so many hours planning absolutely every lecture that I was going to take, or every class that I was going to take, all the way up until I graduated. I knew what I was going to do once I'd graduated, where I was going to work, and all of these different paths. I had spent an entire year and multiple thousands of dollars on this degree that I had told my mother, this is perfect. This is what I'm doing. I was afraid to tell my mother she might have been right, that maybe forensics wasn't for me. But more so, I was really afraid of a choice that I was presented with, of continuing along a path that I knew that wouldn't make me happy, or facing the unknown. And while not every single one of you is going to have the joy of having to switch a major, and not every single one of you has problems that can be fixed by a quick conversation with Lindy Garneau or any other wonderful academic advisor, that fear and that waddling back and forth of do I do it or do I not is massively transferable. And so the first way that I would like to challenge the way that you think is by thinking about your path switches, the big ones and the little ones. And by understanding that if you're going to be scared either way, you might as well get something out of it. During my second year of my undergrad and my first year on campus, because I was a COVID baby, well, not a baby that was born during COVID, but you understand, I learned not to care. And that sounds really weird, but it was a really good lesson for me. During my first week of dawn training, I would get up every morning and have these perfect outfits to make sure that I put my best face forward for all my new friends. And then I got there and some people were in pajamas. And then some people were in bathing suits because the weather was really nice. And I was really confused, okay? Homeschooled kid, right? Really confused. But I was like, it's okay, it's fine. But then every time that I'd have a lecture and I was late to the lecture, I'd have to sit in front of the door and psych myself up because what if I opened the door and it made a noise and then everybody looked at me? God, what if everybody looked at me? And then whenever I would eat in the cafeteria, I'd have to take my food to go because what if I was sitting alone and somebody would laugh? That'd be massively embarrassing. But what's more embarrassing? Going up to a new group of people. Goodness. So, needless to say, I missed out on a lot of fun events and that I was kind of always cautious until final seasons came along. And when I tell you the amount of times that I cried on public transit and not one single person cared, ooh, confidence booster. And on the note of public transit, I got bit by a dog this year. It was a whole ordeal, and I got massive, nasty infection. And so I had to be on some pretty great antibiotics that were great for everything except a bumpy bus ride. And I literally sat at the back of this bus, and I projectile vomited. And I watched as my vomit went from the back all the way up to the front for the next 5 stops because I wasn't missing my lecture. I was going to get off the bus, get some water, and then go to class. And still no one cared. No one noticed. I'm sitting there, I guess I'm a silent puker after all. But I'm sitting there and I'm just like, ooh, maybe no one cared the whole time. And I went to a lecture in pajamas and the world didn't end. And I ate my lunch by myself in the Great Hall and nobody laughed. And I went to an event without a friend and this brilliant thing happened. As soon as my social battery was done, I could leave. I didn't go with anybody, so I could go when I wanted. It was fantastic. So I started to walk into every new situation with the energy of my 6-year-old sister. Like everybody that was there absolutely adored me. And slowly that started to happen, or at least that's what I will continue to tell myself. So that's my second way that I'd like to challenge the way that you think. I'd like to challenge the way that you think about what other people are thinking. They're probably not thinking about what you're doing. They're probably thinking that you're thinking about what they're doing. So just go up and make a friend. For my last little tidbit of wisdom, I'd like to refer to a final project that I did in infectious disease biology. And I give you the utmost forewarning that this is about to get a little bit heavier. For those of you that don't know, Professor Amy Greer is new to our Faculty of Biology. I believe she started in January. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But she's fantastic. And she teaches in this unorthodox way that takes a labor-based approach. And that sounds weird, doesn't it? But if you go forth and you put your best effort into a project, you legitimately try your absolute best, she'll give you the marks. She will go through and she'll still correct it because she's working with you to increase that learning. But it really removes a lot of those barriers in an education where it starts to feel like it's you versus the grader scrambling for these points. Instead, it's you and the professor working together to further that knowledge. When I tell you that this was a breath of fresh air, it really was. And one of her assignments stood out in particular. It was a final essay kind of question where she asked us, what do you think you'll remember in 5 years? And I would like to read you a little bit of an appended version of what I wrote for that. And I wrote to her and said that I can confidently say, in 5 years, that I will remember 2023 and 2024 as being the absolute worst years of my life. That I will remember my mother holding me tight and crying when she realized I was dying. And that I will remember sitting in the ICU, wondering if I was ever going to walk out. That I will remember my foster sister attempting suicide and the professional cleaners that had to come in being evidence of it almost succeeding and getting really close. That I will remember my childhood coach being charged with some pretty heavy allegations. That I will remember my grandfather dying, my long-term boyfriend turning violent, and the random man that didn't listen when I said no. I love you too. I will remember when I made that transition from thinking that I was somebody that was going to do great things to being somebody that could have. And then I remember my infectious disease biology professor. I will remember that she didn't tell me that I had to be perfect, that she instead just told me that I had to show up, that I had to do my best, that anything that I put forth, as long as I put that effort in, was going to be good enough. And I will remember that I internalized that more than she's ever going to know, that although I only saw her once a week, and although I skipped a few lectures here and there, that she really gave me the mantra I needed to get out of bed each morning and finish the semester strong. And so my last tidbit of wisdom for you here is that I'd like to challenge the way that you think about every task in life. Whether it's school, whether it's work, whether it's anything else that you are approaching, I want you to do it with a labor-based approach, where if you put in that effort, where if you show up, you're going to be enough and you're going to be okay. Thank you again for this wonderful opportunity, and best of luck out there as you choose to do what makes you happy, even when it makes you scared. Choose to do what makes you happy, even when you think people are going to laugh. And put forth your best effort, knowing that your effort is allowed to change based on the day. And that no matter what, as long as you tried your best, you're still going to be good enough. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Noël, and to all of our folks for your words of wisdom to the graduating class today. I am going to ask the 4 speakers to please come on stage very quickly for one moment now. So we can show our thanks and our applause, but I do want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to speak here today, for really leaning into this experience and the vulnerability that each of you have shared with folks on the way that Trent has challenged the way you think. We know for some of you this is a new experience, standing on stage, or for some of you it's not, but 10 minutes is really hard. And that from the whole of our hearts, thank you for your wisdom, your thoughtfulness, and your care, and everything that you do for Trent. So if we can give them another round of applause. As a thank you, I'm going to ask our fabulous student staff, Pia. We have some small gifts of appreciation. We have the book, The Last Lecture, and these beautiful prints of Trent University for you to treasure as long as you're here or at home or whatnot. So thank you very, very much. Pia, if you don't mind giving it to those folks. Thank you. This, again, is an event that we finally brought back in person. And again, I was sharing with folks, I think Megan a bit earlier, we haven't done this in 5 years, so we are really changing and bringing back the culture to this event to folks that had no idea it existed. So I want to thank a few folks. I'd like to thank Trent University Alumni Engagement and Services and Advancement for your ongoing support for the college's initiatives each year and welcoming each and every Trent student graduate here to the alumni family. Thank you for the college principals and to Marilyn for your support on this pan-collegiate event. I'd like to thank Pia and Megan and Rachel for reviving this event for me. I thought this was so important to bring back, and I appreciate the support. It wasn't an easy task, and we managed it. I want to thank Dawn for all you do that for our events. We are beyond grateful for this. And thank you to all of you in the audience. May you be supporters of the folks on stage, graduating students, staff, faculty, and students that still have some time left here with us today. I do hope that you've gained a little piece of nugget and wisdom. My learning outcome for anything I do is that you learn one new thing, so if you've achieved that, then we're good. And that you've challenged the way you think about the world that we live in, and most importantly, you. Once again, thank you everyone so much. There are a few refreshments in the lobby, but one more time, a huge congratulations to all the graduates. Best of luck in everything that you do, especially between now and the finish line of your exams and your take-homes and your assignments. Please know that you can always come home to Trent University. Thanks again, and we hope you've enjoyed your last lecture.